The contraction ripped through Aria's body like lightning, and she doubled over in the hospital corridor, her hands clutching her swollen belly. 8 months, pregnant with triplets. She shouldn't have been here at all, but when her best friend, Maya, called in tears about her mother's heart attack, Aria had insisted on coming. Now, as pain radiated through her lower back and abdomen, she wondered if that decision had been a terrible mistake. "Ma'am, are you all right?" A nurse rushed toward her, eyes wide with concern. Aria tried to speak, but another wave of pain stole her breath. The world tilted sideways, and she felt herself falling. Strong arms caught her before she hit the ground, and when she looked up, her heart stopped. Damien Blackwood, the alpha of the Silver Moon Pack, the man who had disappeared from her life 6 months ago without a word, leaving her alone and pregnant with his children. His silver eyes widened in shock as he took in her condition, his jaw clenching with an emotion she couldn't quite read. "Aria," he breathed, and his voice was rougher than she remembered, thick with something that sounded like anguish. "Put me down," she managed through gritted teeth, even as another contraction built. She couldn't do this, couldn't face him now, not like this, not when she was so vulnerable. "You're in labor," he said, his voice taking on the commanding tone that had once made her knees weak. "I'm getting you to a delivery room. Now." Before she could protest, he was moving, carrying her through the hospital corridors with supernatural speed. Nurses scattered and regrouped, following in their wake. Aria wanted to fight, wanted to demand answers for why he'd left, why he'd abandoned her when she needed him most. But the pain was too intense, too overwhelming. They burst into a delivery room, and Damien laid her gently on the bed. A doctor appeared almost instantly, along with a team of nurses. Monitors were attached, vitals checked, and through it all, Damien stood at her side, his hand finding hers. She should have pulled away, should have told him he had no right to be here, but his presence was steadying her in a way nothing else could. "Miss Chen, you're already 7 centimeters dilated," the doctor announced, looking concerned. "These babies are coming today, ready or not. Are you prepared for this?" Was she prepared? She'd spent the last 6 months preparing to do this alone, to raise 3 children without their father, to be strong enough for all of them. But prepared? No, she would never be prepared for this. "I'm here," Damien said quietly, his thumb stroking across her knuckles. "I'm not going anywhere." Aria turned to look at him, really look at him, and what she saw in his eyes made her breath catch. Regret, pain, and something else, something fierce and possessive that sent shivers down her spine, despite the circumstances. "You left," she whispered, and even through the pain, the accusation in her voice was clear. His jaw tightened, and she saw him swallow hard. "I know, and I will explain everything, I swear it. But right now, you need to focus on bringing our children into this world safely." Another contraction hit, stronger than before, and Aria cried out. Damien's grip on her hand tightened, and she could feel his wolf rising, could sense the barely controlled power radiating from him. The alpha was struggling to maintain control while his mate was in pain. And despite everything, despite the hurt and anger she'd carried for months, a part of her took comfort in that. The hours that followed were a blur of pain and pressure, of breathing exercises and encouragement from the medical team. Damien never left her side, never let go of her hand. When she screamed at him, blamed him, told him she hated him, he took it all without flinching. When she broke down crying, overwhelmed by the enormity of what was happening, he whispered words of strength and love into her ear, his voice breaking with emotion. "You're the strongest person I've ever known," he told her during a brief respite between contractions. "You're going to be an incredible mother." "I've been doing this alone for 6 months," she shot back, her voice raw. "Where were you when I was sick every morning? Where were you when I couldn't fit into any of my clothes and cried for 3 hours straight? Where were you when I felt the first kick and had no one to share it with?" The pain in his eyes was so profound, it almost matched her own physical agony. "I was in hell," he said quietly. "I was fighting a war I never wanted, trying to protect you from something you couldn't possibly understand. And I failed. I failed you in the worst possible way." She wanted to press him for details, wanted to demand the full story, but another contraction stole her ability to speak. The doctor was checking her progress again, and then suddenly, everything was happening at once. "It's time," the doctor announced. "On the next contraction, I need you to push." Terror flooded through her. 3 babies, triplets. She was about to become a mother to 3 children, and she had no idea if she was ready for this. But then, Damien was there, his face close to hers, his silver eyes locked on hers with an intensity that grounded her. "You can do this," he said firmly. "I believe in you. Our children believe in you. Now show them how strong their mother is." The contraction came, and Aria pushed with everything she had. The pain was transcendent, beyond anything she'd imagined, but Damien's presence kept her anchored. His voice guided her through each push, each moment of overwhelming sensation. She could hear the encouragement from the medical team, but it was Damien's words that reached her, that gave her strength. "That's it, sweetheart. You're doing so well. Keep going. I've got you." Minutes stretched into an eternity, and then suddenly, miraculously, she heard it. A baby's cry, strong and clear, fills the delivery room with the sound of new life. Tears streamed down her face as the first baby was placed on her chest, tiny and perfect and absolutely beautiful. "A girl," the doctor announced, smiling. "A healthy baby girl." Aria looked down at her daughter, and the love that flooded through her was unlike anything she'd ever experienced. This tiny creature, with her shock of dark hair and scrunched-up face, was hers, theirs. She glanced at Damien and saw tears tracking down his cheeks, his expression one of absolute wonder. "She's perfect," he whispered, reaching out to gently touch the baby's tiny hand. "She's absolutely perfect." But there was no time to rest. Another contraction was building, and the second baby was on the way. The doctor took their daughter to be cleaned and checked, and Aria braced herself for the next round. This time, it was faster, her body knowing what to do. Within minutes, another cry joined the first. "Another girl," the nurse announced, bringing the second baby to Aria. 2 daughters, 2 perfect little girls. Aria felt overwhelmed by joy and exhaustion in equal measure. But they weren't done yet. One more baby waiting to meet them. The third labor was the hardest. Aria was exhausted, her body pushed to its limits. She didn't think she had anything left to give, but Damien was there, his strength flowing into her through their bond. She hadn't felt that bond in 6 months, had thought it severed when he left, but now it was back, blazing, bright, and strong. "One more," Damien urged. "One more push, and we get to meet our son." Son. The word gave her a surge of renewed energy. She pushed with everything she had left, and then suddenly, blessedly, it was over. A third cry filled the room, deeper than his sister's, and Aria collapsed back against the pillows, utterly spent. "A boy," the doctor confirmed, smiling broadly. "Congratulations. You have 3 healthy babies." They brought all 3 children to her, one at a time, and Aria marveled at each tiny face. 2 girls and a boy, all perfect, all healthy, all hers. Damien stood beside the bed, his hand on her shoulder, looking down at their children with an expression of such fierce love and protection that it made her chest ache. "What do we name them?" he asked softly. The question hung in the air between them, heavy with implication. We, not you. He was claiming them, claiming his place as their father. But was Aria ready to let him back in? 6 months of silence, 6 months of abandonment, and now he appeared just in time for the birth. Was that a coincidence or something more? "I had names picked out," she said carefully, her voice hoarse from screaming. "Luna for the first girl, Nova for the second, and Orion for our son." Damien smiled, and it transformed his face, making him look younger, less burdened. "They're perfect names for our perfect children." The nurses took the babies to the nursery for observation, standard procedure for triplets, and suddenly, Aria was alone, with Damien for the first time in 6 months. The delivery room was quiet now, the chaos and urgency replaced by a strange, tense calm. She should have been resting, should have been sleeping, but questions burned in her mind, demanding answers. "Why did you leave?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Damien pulled a chair close to the bed and sat down heavily, as if the weight of the world rested on his shoulders. He looked older than she remembered, lines of stress etched around his eyes and mouth. Whatever had kept him away, it hadn't been easy on him either. 6 months ago, I received intelligence that the Shadowfang pack was planning an attack. He began, his voice low and controlled, not just on Silvermoon territory, but specifically targeting you. They knew you were my mate, knew you carried my children. The threat was credible and immediate. Aria's hand instinctively went to her stomach, now empty, but still tender. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because I was afraid you'd insist on staying and fighting alongside me," he said, meeting her eyes. "And I couldn't risk you or our babies, so I made a choice. I staged a fight with you in public, made it look like I'd rejected you as my mate. I spread rumors that I wanted nothing to do with you or the pregnancy. I made myself the villain in your story so that you would be safe." The words hit her like a physical blow. She remembered that fight, remembered the cruel things he'd said, the way he'd turned his back on her in front of the entire pack. She'd been devastated, broken by his rejection, and it had all been a lie, an act to protect her. "You could have told me," she said, and her voice broke. "You could have trusted me with the truth. If I had told you, you wouldn't have sold the act," Damien said quietly. "Everyone needed to believe that you meant nothing to me, that our relationship was over. Only then would Shadowfang back off." And it worked. They shifted their focus to other targets, other weaknesses. But it meant I had to stay away, had to maintain the illusion. Every day without you was torture, Aria. Every night I lay awake, knowing you were out there, pregnant and alone, thinking I'd abandoned you. Tears were streaming down her face now, months of pain and anger and grief pouring out. "I needed you," she whispered. "I was so scared, and I needed you, and you weren't there." Damien dropped to his knees beside the bed, taking both her hands in his. "I know, God, I know, and I will spend the rest of my life making it up to you if you'll let me. The war with Shadowfang ended 2 weeks ago. We crushed them completely. That's why I came back, why I was at this hospital. I was coming to find you, to explain everything, to beg for your forgiveness. Finding you in labor was fate, Aria. The moon goddess is giving me a chance I don't deserve." She looked down at him. This powerful alpha on his knees before her and saw the truth in his eyes, the pain he'd carried, the sacrifice he'd made. Even if she didn't agree with his methods, he'd done what he thought was necessary to protect his family, and in doing so, he'd broken both their hearts. "You hurt me," she said simply. "You broke my trust, and that's not something that can be fixed with an explanation and an apology." "I know," he said, his grip on her hands tightening. "I'm not asking you to forgive me right away. I'm just asking for a chance to prove myself. Let me be there for our children. Let me support you. Let me show you that I'm worthy of being your mate." Aria closed her eyes, exhaustion washing over her in waves. She was too tired for this conversation, too emotionally raw, but she also knew that decisions made now would shape the future for her children, for all of them. Could she deny her babies their father? Could she deny herself the mate bond that even now was singing in her blood, urging her to accept him, to forgive him? "Okay," she finally said, opening her eyes to meet his gaze. "You can be part of their lives, but you and me, that's going to take time. You have to earn back my trust, Damien. You have to prove that you won't run when things get hard, that you won't make decisions for me without including me. Can you do that?" "Yes," he said immediately, fervently. "Whatever it takes, however long it takes, I'll prove to you that I'm the mate you deserve." A nurse knocked and entered, smiling at them. "The babies are all doing wonderfully. Would you like to see them in the nursery?" Damien helped Aria into a wheelchair, his touch gentle but sure. As they made their way to the nursery, she felt the reality of her new life settling over her. She was a mother now, a mother to triplets, and whether she was ready to forgive Damien or not, he was their father. They would have to find a way to navigate this new reality together. The nursery was bathed in soft light, and there they were, 3 tiny bassinets side by side, 3 perfect babies sleeping peacefully. Luna, Nova, and Orion, her children, their children. Aria felt fresh tears spring to her eyes as she took in the sight. "They're going to change everything," Damien said, softly beside her. "I already feel it. The moment I saw them, something shifted in me. I would die for them, Aria. I would burn the world down to keep them safe." She believed him. She could see it in the way he looked at their children, the fierce protectiveness that radiated from him. Whatever mistakes he'd made with her, she had no doubt he would be an incredible father. "They're going to need both of us," she said quietly. "This isn't going to be easy. 3 babies at once, all the sleepless nights, the crying, the chaos. We have to be a team." "We will be," he promised. "I'm moving back to the city. I'm going to be here every day, every night, whatever you need, whenever you need it. You're not doing this alone anymore." Over the next few days in the hospital, Damien proved his commitment. He was there for every feeding, every diaper change, learning alongside Aria how to care for their newborns. He brought her food, helped her shower when she was too weak to stand on her own, and held her when she cried from the overwhelming mix of hormones and emotions. Maya came to visit, her eyes widening when she saw Damien. "You're back," she said flatly, her tone making it clear she hadn't forgiven him for what he'd done to her best friend. "I'm back," Damien confirmed, meeting her hostile gaze steadily. "And I'm not leaving again." Maya looked at Aria, concern written all over her face. "Are you okay with this?" Aria nodded slowly. "We're taking it one day at a time. Right now, the babies are what matter most." Her friend softened slightly, moving to peer into the bassinets. "They're beautiful, Aria. You did well." "We did well," Damien corrected quietly. and both women looked at him in surprise. He wasn't backing down, wasn't apologizing for claiming his place in this family. There was something admirable about that, even if it was also frustrating. The pack began to hear about the birth, and visitors started arriving. Other wolves from Silvermoon, curious and excited to meet the alpha's children. Damien's parents came, his mother immediately breaking down in tears at the sight of her grandchildren. The older woman was warm and welcoming to Aria, but there was an apology in her eyes too. "I wanted to reach out to you," she said softly, while Damien was out of the room. "When he pushed you away, but he made us all swear to maintain the facade. He was trying to protect you." "I understand," Aria said, and she was surprised to find she meant it. "He did what he thought was right. I just wish he'd trusted me enough to include me in the decision." Damien's mother smiled sadly. Alphas are not known for their communication skills. They think protecting their mates means shouldering every burden alone. "It's something you'll have to teach him differently." The words stayed with Aria long after the woman left. Maybe that was the key. Not just demanding Damien change, but actively teaching him what she needed, how to be partners instead of protector and protected. It would require vulnerability from both of them, trust that had to be rebuilt brick by brick. When it was time to leave the hospital, Aria faced a new dilemma. She'd been living in a small apartment, barely suitable for one person, let alone 3 babies, and all their equipment. Damien had clearly been thinking about the same problem. "Come stay at my house," he said, as they prepared to load the babies into the car. "It's big enough for all of us. The nursery is already set up. You'd have help, support, and I could be there for every moment with the kids." Aria hesitated. Moving into his house felt like a huge step, like admitting they were a family in a way she wasn't sure she was ready for. But practically speaking, it made sense. Her apartment was too small, and doing this alone with triplets would be nearly impossible. "Separate rooms," she said firmly, "and I need my own space. If I'm going to do this, I need to know I can leave if things don't work out." Pain flashed in his eyes, but he nodded. "Of course. Whatever you need to feel safe and comfortable." The house was beautiful. A sprawling estate on the outskirts of the city, with grounds that stretched for acres. The nursery was indeed ready. 3 cribs arranged in a large room, painted in soft, soothing colors. There was a rocking chair by the window, shelves already stocked with books and toys. He'd been preparing for their arrival, even while staying away. "When did you do all this?" she asked, running her hand over one of the cribs. "I started months ago," he admitted. "I knew I couldn't be with you, but I could prepare for when I could come back. I used to come here and sit in this room and imagine what it would be like when our children arrived. It was the only thing that kept me sane." The vulnerability in his admission touched something in Aria's heart. She could picture him here, alone, aching for the family he couldn't claim, preparing a space for children he might never get to raise. It didn't erase what he'd done, but it helped her understand the depth of his sacrifice. The first night at home was chaotic. All 3 babies seemed to wake at different times, creating an endless cycle of feeding and changing and soothing. Aria was exhausted beyond belief, but Damien was right there with her, taking shifts, walking the floors with a crying baby, while she fed another. They worked together in tired synchronicity, communicating with looks and gestures more than words. At 3 a.m, when all 3 babies were finally asleep again, they collapsed on the couch in the nursery, too exhausted to make it to their respective bedrooms. Aria's head drooped onto Damien's shoulder, and she felt him stiffen in surprise before slowly, carefully putting his arm around her. This is harder than fighting a war, he mumbled, his voice rough with fatigue. Despite everything, Aria laughed softly. Welcome to parenthood. I wouldn't change it for anything, he said, and she could hear the truth in his words. This, right here, with you and our children, this is everything I've ever wanted. She didn't respond, but she didn't pull away either. They sat there in the darkness, listening to the soft breathing of their babies, and for the first time in 6 months, Aria felt something like peace. The days blurred together into a haze of feeding schedules and diaper changes and stolen moments of sleep. Damien hired a night nurse to help, insisting that Aria needed rest to recover from the birth. She was grateful for the help, even as she struggled with letting someone else care for her children. Maya came by often, becoming an unofficial aunt to the triplets. She was slowly warming up to Damien, especially as she saw how devoted he was to both the babies and Aria. But she still pulled Aria aside one day, her expression serious. "Are you happy?" she asked bluntly. "Really happy? Because you don't have to do this just because he's their father. You have options." Aria considered the question carefully. Happy? She wasn't sure she'd call it that. Exhausted, overwhelmed, and emotionally confused would be more accurate. But there was something else too, something she was almost afraid to acknowledge. Hope, the possibility that maybe, just maybe, they could build something real from the ashes of what had been broken. "I'm figuring it out," she finally said. "He's been amazing with the babies, and he's trying so hard to make things right. I just need time to trust him again." Maya nodded, seeming satisfied. "Just promise me you won't sacrifice your own happiness for the sake of giving them a father. They need a whole mother more than they need parents who are together but miserable." The words struck deep, and Aria found herself thinking about them late that night as she fed Luna. Was she sacrificing her own happiness? Or was she actually starting to find it again in these quiet moments with Damien and their children? As if summoned by her thoughts, Damien appeared in the nursery doorway. Nova cradled against his bare chest. He'd taken to skin contact with the babies, something the nurses had recommended for bonding. Seeing him shirtless, this powerful alpha, reduced to tenderness by a tiny infant, did things to Aria's heart that she wasn't ready to examine too closely. "Can't sleep?" she asked softly. "Nova was fussing," he said, coming to sit beside her. "I think she might be getting hungry again." They sat together in comfortable silence, each feeding a baby. These were the moments Aria treasured most, when it was just the 4 of them in the quiet darkness, the rest of the world shut out. Here, they weren't alpha and a rejected mate. They were just parents, doing their best to care for the tiny lives they'd created. "I've been thinking," Damien said eventually, his voice hesitant, "about what you said in the hospital, about earning back your trust. I want to start marriage counseling, us together with someone who specializes in pack dynamics and mate bonds. I want to learn how to be the partner you need, not just the alpha who thinks he knows best." Aria looked at him in surprise. Alphas didn't do therapy. It went against everything in their nature to admit weakness, to ask for help with emotional matters. The fact that he was suggesting it spoke volumes about his commitment to making this work. "I think that's a good idea," she said carefully. "But Damien, you have to understand that this might not end the way you want. Therapy might help us co-parent better, but it might also help us realize we're not meant to be mates." His jaw tightened, and she could see him wrestling with his wolf, with the instinct that insisted she was his, and no amount of therapy would change that. But when he spoke, his voice was calm. "Then that's a risk I'm willing to take. Your happiness matters more than my desires. If you decide you're better off without me as your mate, I'll respect that. But I'll never stop being a father to our children." The conversation was interrupted by Orion's cry from his crib. Damien stood immediately, shifting Nova to one arm so he could pick up his son with the other. He moved with practiced ease now, as comfortable with two babies as most people were with none. "I've got him," he said. "You should try to get some rest while you can." Aria watched him settle into the rocking chair with both babies, humming softly to soothe Orion. The sight made her chest ache with complex emotions. This was the man who had broken her heart, but he was also the man who sat up at 3 a.m., humming lullabies to their children. How did she reconcile those two versions of him? Over the following weeks, they settled into a rhythm. Damien was true to his word about therapy, finding a counselor who specialized in wolfpack dynamics. The sessions were hard, forcing them both to confront painful truths. Aria had to articulate just how deeply his abandonment had hurt her, how it had shaken her sense of self-worth and security. Damien had to face the consequences of his actions, the realization that his attempt to protect her had instead caused her immense suffering. But slowly, gradually, they were building something new. Not the passionate, whirlwind romance they'd had before, but something steadier, more grounded. They were learning to communicate, to share responsibilities, to be partners in the truest sense of the word. The babies were thriving, growing more alert and interactive every day. Luna was the calm one, observing everything with serious dark eyes. Nova was the troublemaker, always squirming and fussing until she got what she wanted. And Orion was the charmer, quick to smile and coo, wrapping everyone around his tiny finger. One evening, Aria was in the kitchen, preparing bottles, when Damien came up behind her. She'd grown used to his presence, no longer jumping when he appeared. But this time was different. This time, he placed his hands gently on her waist, his breath warm against her ear. "I miss you," he said softly. "Not just as the mother of my children, but as my mate. I miss the way we used to be together." Aria's hands stilled on the bottles. Her body remembered his touch, the mate bond singing its approval at his proximity. It would be so easy to turn around, to let herself fall back into his arms. But easy wasn't always right. "We can't go back to the way we were," she said quietly. "That relationship was built on incomplete honesty. If we're going to move forward, it has to be as different people who've been broken and are learning to heal. Then, let's build something new," he said, his hands tightening slightly on her waist. "Something stronger, something that can weather any storm, because we face them together." She did turn then, looking up into his silver eyes. There was love. There, yes, but also understanding. He wasn't pushing, wasn't demanding. He was offering, giving her the choice he'd taken away before. "I need more time," she said, but her hand came up to rest on his chest, feeling his heartbeat strong and steady beneath her palm. "But I'm not saying no. I'm saying not yet." Hope blazed in his eyes, and he raised her hand to his lips, pressing a gentle kiss to her knuckles. "I can wait. I'll wait as long as it takes." The moment was broken by the sound of crying from the nursery. They both laughed, the tension dissipating as they went to tend to their children. This was their life now. Romantic moments interrupted by the demands of parenthood. And somehow, Aria was okay with that. The pack was curious about the Alpha's family situation, and eventually, Damien suggested introducing Aria and the babies at a pack gathering. She was nervous about facing the wolves who had witnessed her supposed rejection. But Damien assured her he'd already set the record straight about what had really happened. The gathering was held on the estate grounds, with pack members arriving throughout the afternoon. Aria stood on the porch, Luna in her arms, watching as wolves she'd known before greeted her with genuine warmth. Damien had told the truth, and the pack had responded with understanding and acceptance. They're beautiful," one woman said, gently touching Luna's tiny hand. "The alpha must be so proud." "He is," Aria confirmed, because it was true. Damien's pride in their children was evident in everything he did. As if summoned, Damien appeared at her side, Nova and Orion in his arms. Together they stood before the pack, a family unit, and Aria felt something shift inside her. This was right. This felt like home. Damien addressed the pack, his voice carrying across the grounds. 6 months ago, I chose to protect my mate and unborn children. It was a choice that cost me dearly, that hurt the woman I love, and that I will regret for the rest of my life. But it was also a choice that kept them safe. Today, I present to you my mate, Aria Chen, and our children, Luna, Nova, and Orion. They are under the pack's protection, now and always. A cheer went up from the assembled wolves. Acceptance and celebration rolled into one. Aria felt tears prick her eyes as the pack came forward, one by one, to meet the babies and pledge their loyalty. This was what Damien had been trying to protect, she realized. Not just their physical safety, but their place in the pack, their future. That night, after the pack had left and the babies were asleep, Aria found Damien on the back porch, staring out at the moonlit grounds. She joined him, standing close enough that their shoulders touched. "Thank you," she said softly, "for today, for introducing us properly, for making sure the pack accepted us." "You're my mate," he said simply. "They're my children." There was never any question of acceptance. "I only wish I could have done it sooner." She turned to face him, making a decision that both terrified and exhilarated her. "Damien, I'm ready to try, really try. Not just co-parenting, but us, together." His eyes widened, hope and joy warring in their silver depths. "Are you sure? I don't want you to feel pressured." "I'm sure," she said. And she was. The therapy, the time together, watching him be an incredible father, had all shown her that the man she'd fallen in love with was still there. Wounded, yes, and they both had healing to do. But real. "We'll take it slow. But I want to see where this goes." Damien pulled her into his arms, holding her close. "I love you," he whispered into her hair. "I never stopped loving you, even when I was pushing you away." "I know," she said, her arms coming around him. "And I love you too, even when I was angry, even when I thought I hated you. Some part of me still loved you." They stood there in the moonlight, two broken people learning to heal together, and Aria felt the mate bond strengthen between them. This wasn't a fairy tale ending. There would still be hard days ahead, still work to be done on their relationship, but they would face it together, a team, a family. A cry from inside the house reminded them they weren't alone. They laughed and went to their children, moving with the synchronized ease of parents who'd learned to work together. As Aria fed Nova and watched Damien change Orion's diaper while Luna slept peacefully, she thought about how far they'd come. 3 months ago, she'd been alone and heartbroken. Now she had 3 beautiful children and a mate who was fighting every day to prove his love. Life wasn't perfect, but it was real, and it was theirs. "Hey," Damien said, catching her eye across the nursery. "What are you thinking about?" "Us," she said honestly. "How are we going to make this work? How are we going to raise 3 children and heal our relationship and lead the pack? Together, he said firmly, coming to stand beside her. We're going to do it together, one day at a time, and that, Aria thought, was exactly right. One day at a time, building a life from the broken pieces of their past. It wouldn't be easy, but the best things never were. If you've made it this far in their journey, thank you for being part of Aria and Damien's story. Their road to becoming a family wasn't easy, but love rarely is. If you want to see more stories about second chances, complicated family dynamics, and the power of forgiveness, make sure to subscribe to the channel. Drop a comment below telling me what you thought of Aria's choice to give Damien another chance. And hit that like and subscribe button if you believe in the power of redemption. Until next time, remember that family isn't just about blood or bonds. It's about the choice we make every day to show up for the people we love.